as a creative professional, if I'm talking about their business in their business terms and not about the design that I've done in my aesthetic terms, because they can't relate to it. But if I can take what I've done aesthetically and translate that to what that will do for their business in terms of revenue, sales, margins, market share, that's their language. That's important advice that I would give to any creative professional in this industry.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode right here on the Product and Packaging Powerhouse. And guys, I have a powerhouse with me today. She is a female entrepreneur, business owner, works in the packaging space as a creative designer. And guys, you are in for a treat. And so we have powerhouse guest, Miss Vicki Strull. And so, guys, she has been in this industry doing her thing since the 90s, 1996. Okay. I feel like 96 was in a song somewhere. If I think of it, I'll add it to the show. And so, really, around her concept and with her practice, Vicki Strull Design, she's really thinking about design thinking, brand ideation, and incorporating digital print leadership into her approaches. She always talks about you only have 8 seconds to make that impression on the packaging, which we're going to get into in our conversation. And also, she is part of a conglomerate of different organizations as a well known speaker in the space to talk about the importance of branding on packaging and sustainability and all the things in between to make sure it resonates with your consumers. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so honored to have Powerhouse Vicki Strull. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yes, I'm excited. It's excited. So, to go ahead and kick us off for today, share a little bit about yourself, Vicki, like how you got into the creative space, how you end up coming into the world of packaging and creating your own business.
Sure. So it's interesting. I call myself a graphic designer by trade. I didn't come to design until after I finished college and went to graduate school for design. I actually have a degree in history, which is another podcast in itself, just the transition, from that. So my creative education is in graphic design, and I did a lot of graphic design. And as you said, I've been designing since the 90s. So I was designing before we had websites, which means I was well versed in print because my first type of design I was doing, of course, was print. Then in the 2000s, as things were shifting over to a lot of digital design and digital marketing, I learned some of those skills as well. But my true love was really print, I think, because I understood it so well and it's tangible and you can hold it. And what I saw in just the trends of what was happening in print was that packaging was the growth area. So it's one of those things. I saw that it was the growth area. I was also in the right place at the right time. So I was doing some work for the third largest packaging printer in North America, and I was their executive creative director fractionally for a couple of years. Again, I used to call that, some people call it right place, right time. Some people call it luck. Some people call it God. Some people, you lean in and make your luck. It's all of the above as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
And then I also did a lot of work for HP as they were developing some of their equipment for packaging, for folding cartons, and also for labels, which gave me this really nice expertise. Then, as you move through your career, there's different paths that you can take. And so I'm always designing and doing a lot of branding, but at the same time, people started asking me to do a bit more consulting and just talk to them about what things they could do to their packaging to make it more effective, especially because I understood the design aspect. I understood how to work with clients, so the brands, and then I also understood production. So this convergence, it was the juxtaposition of that people started to value, which is how I got into the speaking. So when
Mm,
if we talk about it just as a business, I do a lot of different things. So I call it diversified income,
yeah.
where I'm certainly doing at least 50% of what I'm doing is still design work and branding. Probably another 20 or 30% is, probably 30, is consulting with different companies. So a bit more creative direction and consulting. And then I would say, if we do the math, that's another 20%. That would be speaking, but it's not really 20. I'd call it 10 to 12. And then there's that extra 8% where it's just miscellaneous things where people ask you to do. It's not, it's in your wheelhouse because you've done it before, but not really in the main revenue streams of what you do.
Man, okay, guys. So did y'all hear Vicky's full history? And this is just an overview, guys. And let's rewind a few things. The fact that you have a degree in history, okay, like amazing. So I'm sure you could probably all educate all of us just on the history of packaging, the history of design, and merging your degree in history and graphic design together. And then also the fact that you've seen the evolution of technology, right? And how even technology around packaging, because that was a big growth area for you, and seeing how things were done previously, to what they are now. A lot of evolution, a lot of technology, innovation, and we're still at this innovation peak within packaging with AI and technology and all those things, right? But I really love, how you worked for HP and really understood, the importance around the packaging, the labels. So I want to ask you, we have a HP print center here in Atlanta. So guys, we're both based in Metro Atlanta. We actually live about 5 minutes from each other, ironically. But have you visited the HP print experience in Alpharetta to see them?
Oh yeah, I mean multiple times, because when I was doing a lot of work for them, I was up there all the time. It's a fantastic center. They have events a couple of times a year where they're bringing
Mhm.
people in to showcase the new equipment and the new features and benefits of the equipment. One of the fun things when I was working with HP a lot was we would design, and typically you design something and then you're working with your brand and then you're working with your printer. But when you're doing work for HP, we're creating things, we're designing things. And then I just go up to the center and we start pulling test proofs to say, oh, is it this? Is it this? Oh, let's shift this a little. Let's move this. I'll change the color. I mean, I would have my laptop and we would make changes on the fly to get the samples exactly how we wanted them.
Love that. And it seems like that's probably a best practice that companies and fractional service providers could start to adopt as well, to make sure that you're taking your laptop with you, pulling those test proofs, doing the color calibrations, those press checks, things of that sort, and make those changes in real time versus doing a piecemeal, as I call it. So I think it's a really good practice that we all can adopt. And that means I need to start bringing my designer with me, to these different print checks and looking at proofs and stuff like that so we can calibrate on the spot. So I love that.
Yeah.
And so thinking about like the convergence of your practice where you have design, which is still majority of your business, about 50%, then you do consulting, about 30%, speaking, 10 to 12, then 8% miscellaneous. Guys, we are women-owned businesses, okay? We have to diversify. And I feel like that's something every company is starting to adopt, because if you only have one way of getting money, you may be limiting yourself, right? And so, Vicky, my question to you is, with the convergence of speaking, looking at production work, consulting, and design, which aspects would you say has been the most challenging for you over your career?
Oh, that's a good question. I happen to believe that our careers evolve. So earlier in my career, the majority of what I was doing was design work, which is really coming up with the concept and then executing it.
Mhm.
And as people evolve in their career, that can kind of shift. And it shifts because we developmentally are wiser. We also then are similar ages of the people that are our clients, which I think helps some. When I was in my 20s and I had my own business by the time I was 26, I thought I knew so much, and I would have these clients who were in their mid 40s, and I couldn't figure out why they're not listening to me. And I think that it's now, in hindsight, it's they just didn't, I was too young. So whether I think I was giving still very good advice, it wasn't the same credibility. There's a point at which I began walking into the room and the credibility was there. I think it was based on experience, but that experience comes with age. So it's this convergence of that. And so I don't know that there's a specific part of what I do that's the most challenging. I think the most challenging for me was giving that time to be able to walk into a room. It could be a boardroom, it could be a room with people where you're giving the advice and you've got the experience behind you to prove that, yes, I do know what I'm saying. Now, what I'll also say, because you brought up the history degree and the design and so on, what I have learned is that in my career, it's the formative years. When I say I didn't take up design until my early 20s and until I was in graduate school, my formative years were very academic because that's where I was tracked. And my history degree is actually from an Ivy League university. And while I was there, I also took a number of business classes. And I was around a number of business students because I was at University of Pennsylvania, which has Wharton. And so I have this way to understand business that a lot of designers don't have. And I think for me specifically, figuring out the conversation around business and design and how design helps business really unlocked a lot of opportunity. So I've written some articles for designers about the necessary terms to know when you're in a meeting, because it does change, and you know this, it does change the trajectory of the conversation as a creative professional if I'm talking about their business in their business terms and not about the design that I've done in my aesthetic terms, because they can't relate to it. But if I can take what I've done aesthetically and translate that to what that will do for their business in terms of revenue, sales, margins, market share, that's their language. And that's really important. That's important advice that I would give to any creative professional in this industry.
Oh, wait, can you share that link with me? I would love to include it in the show notes because to your point, like with designers, you all are very creative, right? You're not thinking about the business jargon, you're not thinking about anything, you're not thinking about the numbers. Your element is creative and
That's
design.
right.
That's it. So if there's an opportunity to bridge the gap, understanding the business terminology and design is critical because that can help with driving decisions, understand how to speak the language of your clients, understanding the importance of it. So when we're thinking about COGS and this is our target cost and we have to be under this percentage, this percentage for the margin, as a designer, you can understand that because you have a baseline. So, guys, if get this link, I'm going to share it with you all, and I'm a student too, so I can see her information because there's something we all can learn from each other in this quest. So I appreciate you for sharing that with us, Vicki. And so thinking about like your creative space, you're really big about you have 8 seconds to make an impression on the packaging, right? So share with us your philosophy around this 8-second rule and what companies and brands can start to do to be mindful of that as well from a design perspective.
Sure. So there's this idea of moments of truth where you get to the shelf and you've only got a couple of seconds. So I think about it this way. You walk into a store and you're so stimulated by everything that's around you that you see, and you've only got a few seconds to either find the piece that you want, and you don't, and if you think like a shopper, which is one of the things I'm able to do, is I put myself in their shoes. And if you think like a shopper, they're going through and you don't want the person to be frustrated. So you either want them, if they know your brand, to be able to find it really fast. It's why when grocery stores change their planogram, it really messes me up because I'm visual.
Same.
I know where my stuff is. And now they've moved something from this side of the aisle to that side and I can't find it. And it's annoying.
Yeah.
So that's what you don't want with shoppers. So when you think about it in terms of 8 seconds, for some things, it's 2 seconds. There was a study that was done that said people spend as little as 2.5 seconds choosing their cereal. So if
Mm.
you think about it, if I walk in and I look for Cheerios, I'm looking for yellow. So that's a few seconds. Olive oil, which I've designed several brands of olive oil, people will spend as much as 60 seconds looking for olive oil. So then you have your few seconds, you get noticed. Let's say you're not sure, but then the next thing that you do is you pick it up. And I've done a lot of research on this. I did a lot of research on this. I partnered with Sappi, who makes a paperboard, and I also
Yep.
partnered with Clemson University, and we will publish this study in a few months, but a lot about the importance of touch as it pertains to sales and customer behavior and things. So if you think about it, you see it and then you touch it. So the
Hmm.
seconds have to do with how we're interacting and then what that does to us as shoppers subconsciously. And then you can really build a lot of loyalty and sales based on those few seconds. But it is important to get someone's attention to either divert them from what they were originally intending
Yeah.
or to get them to hold something, right? So it's that kind of
Hmm.
thing. And just by the way, sometimes people talk about shopping and what we do as, oh, you just want to make someone buy something. The idea of impulse shopping is a phenomenon that people already understand. So most people, when they have a list, they in
Hmm.
the back of their mind, and there's studies that have studied this, that have talked about this. So there's literature
Yeah.
out there about this. Most people have a certain amount of budget that they retain, whether they consciously know it or not, that when they see something that they weren't expecting to buy, they toss it in their basket.
Oh, wait, that's me in a pair of shoes. Okay. But that's a whole nother segment. But think to that point, that's really important because even with me being an avid shopper of Target, I love some Target,
Yeah.
roaming down the aisles, I go in specifically for shampoo and conditioner. I leave out with a whole lot more. So yeah, telling on myself. Target gets all my money and I get the red car savings too. Okay. But as part of that, when products move, I know how frustrated I am, because I'm like, I went to this aisle to look for this shampoo, this conditioner, but now I see Kristen Ness, I see Monday, I see Suave, and Suave changed their line, Pantene Pro V in partnership with this initiative with the Go packaging. I now see Cantu, I see Mael Organics. I'm seeing all these brands. I'm like, this came to get shampoo. But a lot of times I'm picking up the products based on the design first. Then I'm looking at the information to see, is it going to solve my need? Is it helping me with hydrating my locks for moisture? Do I need it for, better shine? Do I want more volume in my hair? Whatever the case may be. So to your point, that 8 seconds is critical. And I know I've only bought cereal even as a kid, thinking back on it. I've picked up cereal based on that 2.5 second because of the color. Lucky Charms. That would be my go-to because it had the rainbow on it, and it had has nice little marshmallow pieces inside. Then Fruit Loops. That was my second one. So thinking through that, that's something to your point, we all can be thinking like a shopper to incorporate that into the design, into the strategy, that goes into sales and the impulse buying and how it's executed on the packaging. So there's so many elements around it. So I want to ask you this question, Vicki. With your experience, over 30 years of experience working in this space, understanding you only have 8 seconds to make an impression, what is a misconception that brands have when it comes to branding and design on packaging?
I think that one of their misconceptions is that more on a primary display label is better. So
Mm,
sometimes I'm working on something and the design differentiates from the other brands that will be near it in the category. And then
mhm.
they say, oh, but we need to add this, and we need to add this, and we need to add this, and all of a sudden it becomes too busy and the hierarchy gets messed up because they can't all be the most important,
Right.
and people get overwhelmed and they pass it by. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that more is better. I think there's a
Mm,
second misconception about claims selling the product, because to your point, you picked it up because of the design, not because of the claim. So if you can get someone to pick it up because of the design, they will in fact turn it over if they want to learn more. So I think that's another one.
Yeah.
And then I think a third one that I could say is this idea of what I call sea of sameness. So the brands that become Me Too brands. So there's a certain design of something, they want some of that action, they design something similar, but they never quite crack it because people, maybe one of the misconceptions is that people won't notice. People are way smarter and they know when they're trying to be duped. And
Yeah.
so it just doesn't work.
Oh, wait, that's guys, that's a whole class in itself, like just with misconceptions and the 3 points you mentioned. And I'm gonna ask a follow-up to the first point of the misconception, which is, or excuse me, the second, which is brands think that they should put all the claims on the packaging. So to help reduce all the information to not overwhelm a consumer, what are other strategies you would recommend for brands to use to talk about the claims and the impact and efficacy and things of that sort?
So I think that if if brands are going to put claims on a package, I think they need to restrict it to the most important, maybe the second most important for the primary display panel, and that's it. Knowing
Okay.
that someone will turn it around. Now, you typically on the back, you have some kind of narrative copy, you've got a barcode, you've got ingredients, you've got
Mhm.
like a variety of things. If it's folding curtain, you get two more panels. I always think that QR codes are underutilized. So I think there is opportunity for QR codes. I think in folding curtains, there's opportunity for information on the inside. I think that's often wasted real estate. And if you think about the real estate, that's a lot of real estate if
Yeah, it
it's
is.
completely blank. If it's a C1S, then make sure that your uncoded side has really good ink holdout so that it can hold some fine type. You know, you might have some small type or some claims, or think about Easter eggs. And I call Easter eggs are the little surprises that might be on the bottom or the top on a jar with labels. You have a front label, you have a back label, you might have a continuous label. You could also have a top label. So there's some branding opportunities to put an extra label on the top. Now, when we start to think about all of these different things that I'm suggesting, QR codes are probably, and I haven't priced it out, you and I could probably make a chart. QR codes are probably the least expensive because you're not adding another element to the packaging, but you are
Mhm.
adding a landing page and some
Mhm.
kind of video or something to give information. On the others, you might be adding some elements. So perhaps on your folding carton, you're now printing both sides. On a label, you might have an extra label. Easter egging would be like you open up your folding carton and there's
Yeah.
a fun little fact, there's a joke,
Yeah.
there's something that surprises somebody. It could be
Yeah.
something on the bottom that, just if you know kind of thing, which is
Yeah.
just fun and delightful. Those things get posted. Those things get
Mm.
talked about on social media. And then
Yeah.
attaching that conversation on social media to the value of your packaging, those things need to be connected so that
Mm.
when you're talking about the ROI, you can connect. There's a through line on that, and you can start to connect that, which should go into the considerations when you're talking to the decision makers
Mm.
about the pricing of your packaging. Same thing
Mm.
with adding, say, a label to the top. If it enhances that experience and makes your packaging seem that much more premium or that much more credible, and you get more sales because of that, if there's a way to connect that, that's very valuable when you're
Yeah.
talking about the ROI of packaging.
Oh, wait, guys, you see why Vicky is a renowned speaker, okay? Because she is giving us a class right here on the Product and Packaging Powerhouse. And so, guys, make sure you do follow Vicky. All of her notes will be down in the show notes for you all to connect with her, to follow her, because she not only is giving us the tea right here, but this is a whole class. That's why she's a professor too, okay? So she's teaching her students in the future generation about the importances of connecting the business value to the design, understanding how to execute it on the packaging. And one of my conversations with Rachel Hassel, VP of Procurement, she always talks about non-negotiables. So, like in this case, what is a non-negotiable? Is it we have to communicate those top two or three claims that has to be on the packaging, meaning we are going to pay more of a premium price for the packaging? or we want to keep it minimalistic and use QR codes to navigate our consumers to our landing page to get their information, subscribe to our text message, whatever the case may be. So it's all part of the strategy, guys. And you're hearing it right here from Powerhouse Vicki, right here on the show. And so, since we're talking about claims, you have to talk about the shady packaging. And guys, Vicki is intentional about letting us know about the shady packaging that is out here. So, share with us a little bit about your philosophy of the shady packaging, some of the things you see in the marketplace, because it relates to the claims, and how we're starting to see this trend of shady packaging and greenwashing.
So shading packaging was really built out of seeing some different things where you feel like as a shopper, as a consumer, you've been duped. So
Mm,
for example, there's a window and it shows there's a ton of vegetables on your frozen pizza. You open the carton and all the vegetables are concentrated where the window is. That's shady. So that's just trying to dupe me. So it was
yeah.
really built out of that. Or my kids have gotten this before. You get something, maybe it's some kind of an art kit. So typically these were, for my daughter, they were art kits. And it's in a big container, probably plastic, and it had all the colors or all the beads. Let's say it was some kind of marker kit or chalk or whatever it was. And you thought, oh yeah, it's a ton, because you don't really have a sense of how much space
Yeah.
20 pieces of chalk take up. So you're not really focused on 20 pieces of chalk. God, there's no way they could line up in a carton, in a container that's this big. So what do? They line them up around the edge and the rest is filled with cardboard. There's something shady about that, because I'm
Yeah.
thinking I'm getting more than I'm
Yeah.
getting, because visually I am. And so I try to distinguish the difference between shady packaging and packaging where it's just not designed well. So I try to distinguish between those, because sometimes it's
Okay.
not intentional. When there's an intention, I'm calling that shady packaging. And so
Got
that's
it.
where that was really built out of. I did one recently about, and what's so great as I've started this is people send me things now all the time. There's a couple of series that I do. I do one on shady packaging. You mentioned greenwashing. So I do some things on sustainability, and really sustainability shadiness, which is a
Yeah.
cousin of shady packaging. And then I also do design fails. And so and design fails are just funny things that see, like for instance, Starbucks on the side of a van. The van opens, and depending on where you lay the lettering on the side of the van, when the door opens, you don't see a full Starbucks. It covers up some of the letters. You just see SUKS, which is funny to me. And so people don't think about that. So design fails are that. So so now at this point, people send me things all the time. So I got one
Yeah.
recently. She was very upset about it. It was two different sizes of deodorant. She thought it was shrinkflation. I posted it. Then people wrote back to me and said, this isn't actually shady. It's not actually shrinkflation. They've made these
Mm,
two sizes for more than 10 years. You're mistaken. Well, I appreciate that too, because they say
mm,
it in a really respectful way. They're not trying to
yeah.
be disrespectful. They're actually educating me on it, which is very helpful. So that wasn't intentional. And shrinkflation is something else that we've seen. So shrinkflation
Mhm.
is where I'm paying $3.99 for a box of Cheerios that was 20 ounces. I'm now paying the same $3.99 for a box of Cheerios that's 18 ounces. The first time I saw that was with ice cream. You would have your half
Yes.
gallon, and then all of a sudden the half gallons became 1.5 quarts. Same price, similar, same shaped packaging, but wasn't as much. Same price. Now the price is actually more. So that's
Yeah.
shrinkflation.
Oh, wait, guys, make sure you follow Vicky because she has the series, like she talked about, the shady packaging, the design fails. Oh, the one that's iconic for me is the Pampers, where the little kid is laughing, but his face is shrinked across the side of it. And it looks like he's screaming or like a monster. It's like, poor thing.
Right.
So like the design fails and then greenwashing because everybody wants to talk about sustainability, but yet we're seeing a lot of greenwashing around this space too. So guys, make sure you follow Vicky to check out all those elements that she's posting as part of her series. And so one thing I want to ask you is, just crush based upon all three of your series that you post on LinkedIn and on your respective pages, how can brands really be intentional to not be greenwashing, to not have the shady packaging, and also design well, what can brands do to make sure that they're thinking through each of those three elements from a
I
design
think it
perspective?
I think it comes down to brand purpose and to corporate purpose. So if they're not in it, you have to, and we live our lives this way as well. We have
Yeah.
our own core purposes. I think also brands have core purposes. And if they are living by that purpose, they're not in it just to make the money. There's actually broader things that they're trying to do. And if they're always coming back to that core purpose, they're not going to do the customer on purpose because
Hmm.
they have a core purpose why they're in business aside from making money, which
Yeah.
is, and I've worked with companies on really developing that core purpose and creating internal communications around that, because then you have better productivity with your employees. And then if you have that, it comes down to integrity. And so if you're
Hmm.
a company that has integrity, then you're not going to have these kinds of shady packaging because it doesn't live up to your purpose of being a company with integrity. Sure, there's companies that make mistakes. Now,
Yeah.
little differently with greenwashing, people have different interpretations of sustainability. Sometimes there is a breakdown
Mm.
between what is coming down from the very top and what is actually able to be executed. So there may be something that the C-suite is creating policy around, but it's taking a lot more time to execute on that, except the person that's executing on that might be measured in their own review on how they are complying with that policy. And
Hmm.
yet there's a breakdown between policy and execution. So they may have to cut a corner because that is in fact how they're paid. That's how they're reviewed. So to me, there's a bit of a breakdown that happens there.
Mm.
I don't think that that, again, is intentional to greenwash unless it's shady. I think that there is a breakdown in execution. So, for example, I think that Sephora does a lot of things that are good in terms of relating to women and makeup and everything that they've done in the space. And
Right.
they haven't yet figured out how to ship an eyeliner to me that's not in a huge carton. That's a breakdown in supply chain. That's
Yeah.
not, I've put it on as shady. But really, if you get down to the root of that, they just
Yeah.
need to figure out their process.
Oh, we guys, this is a whole class right here with Vicky because to that point, we are seeing a breakdown, like with C-suite connecting with the consumers and what's feasible for execution. And a lot of times when I work with my clients, they're like, well, we want the full gamut. We have to hit all these metrics. Okay, well, what are ones we can actually execute on? Like, I'm about execution. So we may not be able to hit all 10 of what you're trying to do, and we may fall flat on our face. Rachel has talked about that on our prior episode too. But what is the one or two that we can really execute on, really own it? How do we get the creative team in it? How can they understand the substrates to know the print, help with not having registration issues? How is it going to resonate on the shelf based upon the colors we choose? So it's a whole strategy, guys, and that's why you have to have everybody at the table. It's my background, okay? Because there's a lot of conversation that has to be had and not just in silos. So to that point, Vicki shared some great insights around her shady packaging series, her greenwashing series, design fail series, but also things you all can start to adopt as well within your practice. So I love that. So guys, we are starting to wrap up because we're at our time for today to be respectful of your time, Ms. Vicki. And so I want to get quickly into our power round. So, guys, if you listen to any of our segments, we do a lightning speed round with our powerhouses based upon a fun fact that they have shared with us. So, I'm going to share with you that Vicky is an avid cycler. Okay. Good and has done so much cycling that she has cycled the equivalent of 1.5 circumferences around the world. Yeah, that's amazing. And I have not been on a bike in years. Okay. Whole nother topic. So I'm going to put 60 seconds on the clock so we can ask Miss Vicky about her favorites and some of the fun questions we have. So Miss Vicky, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So, first question, what has been your most memorable cycling experience so far?
It's the animals when I'm out and I've seen a deer or a snake or a box turtle walk across. It's really pretty amazing when nobody's around and you're in nature and that deer just walks right in front of you.
Okay, I love that. So, being in tune with nature and seeing all the animals. What is your go to snack or drink for long rides?
Oh, I'm a water girl, so I always have a lot of water, and I have a certain power bar that I like that
Okay.
I have usually before a big ride.
Okay, what's the favorite power bar?
It's Go Macro,
Okay.
chocolate chip oatmeal.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a particular cycling challenge or event that's on your bucket list?
I would love to do a cycling tour in France or Italy where the van goes with you. You may cycle 20, 25, 30 miles, but then
Okay.
you get to sleep in a nice hotel or bed and breakfast because I don't want to go camping. I want a hot shower and white fluffy towels.
No, that's right. Like, look, I need some hot water hidden. Okay. And
Yep.
last question, packaging and design should be able to fill in the blank.
Oh, should be able to inspire.
Simple, but to the point. I love that. So, guys, this has been such a great conversation, Vicki. And so, just let everybody know how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Vicki Strull. So just you can DM me or follow me on LinkedIn. You can also email me and you'll put this in the links. So you can email me directly too. And my website is vickistrull.com. Super easy.
All of her links will be down in the show notes for you all to get in contact with her and connect with her and check out all of her awesome series. So, guys, thank you all so much for tuning into this segment for Product and Packaging Powerhouse. Make sure you're being intentional to design and execute simultaneously, understand how to really relay the ROI and understanding the business jargon and creative side to your stakeholders. And ultimately, packaging and design, excuse me, shall inspire. So, guys, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our platforms, and we'll see you on the next episode right here on the Product and Packaging Powerhouse.